We also added a hibiscus. This is the Holy Grail. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. This again was an impulse buy. Please don't look at the weeds. You can see that gorgeous flower. We're going Russell's Gardener here outside to finish up the 2023 Garden Editions video. So come along with me and I'm going to show you what else we accomplished in the garden in 2023. And I'm actually going to start back out front again because I forgot to include the flamethrower red bud that we planted on the side of the house. So let's take a quick walk around to the side here and I will show you the red bud and just tell you how we got it and how it ended up here. So this is the flamethrower red bud that we got planted on the side of the house. There was a standing ovation serviceberry here. Serviceberries just for some reason do not do well. They're very popular. They can be pretty if they do well, but they tend to get decimated by Japanese beetles. They get defoliated. They get cedar apple rust. So we removed a standing ovation serviceberry and replaced it with this flamethrower red bud. This red bud is the one we received as a replacement for the first one, which you will see later in this video, planted at the top of the property in what was the woods, because we thought that one was dead. Basically received a stick with some branches and no roots. So of course as soon as I contacted the company and they sent me on a new one, that other one started to leaf out, so we were left with this one. We put it in a bigger pot. Weren't sure what we were going to do with it, but it seemed like the perfect location since I was not happy with the way that standing ovation serviceberry looked. So I think this will look really good here once it starts to get a little bit mature. It'll get a little bit bigger, provide some shade. I'm actually really looking forward to see this mature over the years, to see what kind of structure it provides to us on this side of the house. Now let's take a walk up to another addition on the side of the house, kind of, but in the backyard. I guess not the side of the house, but the right side of the yard, an area that I don't often show. We added these 3 Castle Spire hollies, which this is where the miscanthus grass was, the silver feather that we transplanted up to the top of the property that you will see later on in the video. They were not going to provide the structure or the height here. So these were kind of another impulse buy. I really like the movement of miscanthus grasses, and they really should have been planted someplace else. So they were here for a few years. They did grow quickly, but again, they were not going to provide the structure or the height that I feel like is needed in this bed. So again, it will block the view of the neighbor's backyards, both from our direction and their direction, and provide some nice height here. These will get about 12 to 15 feet tall. I think the tag says 3 to 4 feet wide. I never believe tags because in my personal experience, stuff just gets wider than it says. So I'm guessing these are going to probably be a 5 to 6 foot wide tree, which will be nice. Nice backdrop here. This bed is going to go through some more transformation in the spring, but we'll deal with that in the spring. So let's take a walk. I think that's the only thing that's changed in this bed this year. So let's take a walk to the rain garden, the top rain garden. This hasn't gone through a ton of transformation this year. We just really planted, I should say transplanted a lot of items up here. So the 5 blonde ambition grasses got transplanted up here from the same side of the house where the flamethrower was. Again, I don't think they're going to stay here. This is the last bed created in our yard, so we still have room up here to put stuff, and this has kind of become our holding area, at least for the rest of this year, for items that needed to be moved but do not yet have a permanent place. So that's where the 5 blonde ambition grasses got transplanted. The gray owl juniper is planted up here. This is in its permanent location because Again, as mentioned in a previous video, this will provide a nice silvery blue backdrop to the stems of the Arctic sun dogwood in the winter. Those have been planted there for a few years. Some more transplants up here. 5 sneezeweeds that were on top of the retaining wall. These are where these were where the lime ricky hydrangeas are now. I'm not going to get too close to them because they really do look horrible. They always look horrible at this time of the year, which is why they were transplanted. The 5 prairie drop seeds were transplanted up here. These, again, look a little brown. I suspect next year they will be just fine. Even when they were on the retaining wall, they tended to do this by late summer. They are a drought-tolerant grass. They don't really like a lot of moisture. So they've probably received more moisture up here since the transplant than they normally do. So I'm not sure why they always look so brown. But up here it's far enough away from the house that's kind of out of sight, out of mind. I know they'll be fine here. All of these coneflowers were transplanted up here earlier this year. They're way past their prime now for the most part, but when they were in full bloom, they do look beautiful up here, and you can check those out in a previous video. I think, I'm not sure what the name of the video was, but I'll try to link it in the description. What else is up here that was transplanted? Oh, the goldenrod and the Joe Pye weed. So these were transplanted from another location as well. The bed on our top retaining wall. This is a fireworks goldenrod, which still isn't in 100% bloom yet. Joe Pye is, though. Looking great. So there's a clump here of the Joe Pye weed. There is another clump of the goldenrod. I suspect the goldenrod will recover. It did not like the transplant because I think, as I had stated in a previous video, it was transplanted by the person who was doing our mulch, and they just did a terrible job. So I feel like it's going to take a while to recover, and next year it will look better. Here's another clump of the Joe Pye weed, which is looking brilliant. The Joe Pye weed did not miss a beat, but we transplanted that ourselves. We are generally a heck of a lot more careful with transplanting and planting than anybody else would on our property. So that's always a lesson learned, but sometimes we just can't do it all ourselves, and we do hire people. There is another clump of Joe Pye weed. And then, I think in my plant haul video, I mentioned that we had bought 2 pinpoint blue and gold fall cypress. If I can get around and view from this side, it's just a little bit of a better view. So 2 of the chokeberries we moved up to the top of the property, which we will see, or maybe you have already seen in this video. It depends on when I put the video together, what order I go in. But there were 2 of the brillantissima chokeberries here, and on this side they're fine because we don't really see this side of the berm from the house. But I wanted, again, something evergreen that is eventually going to get big and close the view in from here. And I've wanted pinpoint blue and gold fall cypresses for a long time. I just think they're a gorgeous shrub. They don't like it moist. This is the berm of the rain garden, so I'm kind of hoping it's enough above the native soil here, and we did plant them a little bit higher because this side of the berm can be moist, typically up at the edge of the woods there, though not typically down this far. So I'm hoping that those 2 factors are going to keep them happy here. We planted them up, and they're already on a berm which is above the native soil, and they will also be protected from the wind here, mostly by this holly that is the last in a row at the bottom of the berm. It's probably, so we did not plant this year. This was planted in 2021, and it's already probably, I don't know, 8 or 9 feet tall. That will continue to get a little bit taller and wider. We plan on pruning these hollies so that they do not get enormous. This is just the straight species of Ilex opaca. They can get quite large and rangy For as long as we're here, we're going to try to keep them in check. The other things I mentioned in our plant haul video were these 3 tiger eye sumacs. Now these are in a holding spot here. We wanted to create a bed at the top of the property. We were hoping to have some help with that because we needed wood chips and mulch and compost. That did not materialize. I never heard from the guy who we had out to give us an estimate. And so that's that. We just did not feel like doing all that work ourselves this year. We will probably tackle that in the spring ourselves. The bed will be created up there. These 3 tiger eye sumac will go at the edge of what is right now lawn and the meadow. And because these transition nicely, these, how can I say this? These, I read it somewhere about them, and that's why I bought them. These define the transition between less formal and formal areas really well, and that's exactly what they will do. And we will create another bed for them that will get a little bit of landscaping in the bed and behind the bed, and then we will have our raised beds for the vegetable garden in there as well. The last thing, this is also in a holding spot because we did not get a beautyberry transplanted. This is the Castle Wall Holly that will be the pollinator for the 3 Castle Spire and the 3 Castle Keep. This is going to go closer to the house. It could probably stay all the way out here and still be in close enough proximity to those female hollies to provide pollination, but the beautyberry is a little bit wild for me in front of it's on the back of the house, but right up against the house, because I think, again, I was sent the wrong plant. I mentioned that, I think, previously. And I actually think the beautyberry is either going to come up here behind this berm or go in the new area where the tiger eyes are going to go. We also added a hibiscus. This is the Holy Grail. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. This, again, was an impulse buy. Please don't look at the weeds. You can see that gorgeous flower. Really, really dark red with dark foliage. This is where the Joe Pye was and the goldenrod. So we took the Joe Pye weed out from here because it was becoming just too big of a clump for this area. We transplanted a Mr. Poppins that serves as the pollinator for our berry poppins and our berry heavy gold. He was actually not far from here. He was right here where we have a coneflower. And then we transplanted some Stacky's Humelo from another location. So those will provide pretty pink flowers in the spring, late spring and into summer. And the Mr. Poppins, you know, he's just a pollinator, although he does get pretty flowers in the spring. And behind these totem pole panicums is where the goldenrod was. So you can see why we transplanted that. Again, I always overestimate how many plants I can fit into a bed. If the goldenrod were still in here, everything here would just be on top of each other. So that's why we moved them from this location. It's just a little bit more of a wild area back there on the berm of the rain garden, and they will do fine. One other addition is this blue arrow juniper. As you can see, we have another blue arrow juniper just outside of the patio doors there. And I thought, for, again, evergreen interest and to have some consistency, I wanted another one here. So bought another one, planted it here, and it's already 5 feet tall. Added some opalescence phlox to the bottom there. Initially what was here was a blue diddley chaste tree, which that is a very small bed surrounded by pavers and stone from the fireplace. And for some reason our chaste trees, although they do well here, they do not like it right up against the patio. They were tending to dry out and wilt an awful lot, which is odd because they are definitely plants that like it on the drier side. So we moved the chaste tree over here, and it's doing fine. It has not done any of the wilting it used to do on that side. You can see why I love the blue diddley chaste tree. I love anything with those gorgeous blue flowers. So that's just another small addition to give us some evergreen interest on this side of the house. I love the blue color of the blue arrow juniper, and Because they are a juniper, they're a little bit better with deer resistance. So, and they are nice and narrow, much narrower. Oh, I got a hummingbird. I don't know if you can see that. It's coming to see me. If I can get it. Hi. They're so special. And I love the salvia. Anyway, so they're much better at deer resistance, and the blue arrow junipers tend to stay narrow, whereas things like arbs can get much wider than stated in their descriptions. So I think these will provide a nice exclamation point of blue in the garden. So some of the other biggest additions and changes we have had on our property in 2023 is up in an area that is unfinished. So it's not going to be the prettiest to look at. It's at the, I would say, the top quarter or top third of our property that used to be an ash forest. In 2022 we had them all cleared because they were dead. And we wanted to plant some structural items at the edge of what used to be the woods, because the rest of it right now is a meadow with some trees that were left standing, and I really didn't want just this up here to be meadow. It just didn't make sense to me, since our yard had, for the 8 years that we've been here, always been backed by dark woods that provided a backdrop for the rest of our garden. I wanted to try to landscape at least 15 to 20 feet in. So that's what we've been attempting to do up here. So one of the additions is another flamethrower, redbud. This was the original one that we received that we thought was dead because it had no root system to speak of. But a few weeks after we planted it up here, it started to leaf out, and the foliage is really beautiful, and it is starting to do the flamethrower thing, which is to weep a little bit, which is brilliant. It's completely different looking than most redbuds in that the branches grow kind of out like a pagoda dogwood almost. So this is going to provide some nice structure up here once it gets to its mature height, which I believe is about, I think this is about a 15 to 20 tall by 15 to 20 wide. We also have these 3 miscanthus grasses that we transplanted up here from another location. These are miscanthus silver feather, and I believe I had mentioned in my August tour that they are a little floppy. I'm hoping that's just because they either are not getting enough water, it has been a dry summer, or this is just their reaction to being transplanted, and hopefully next year they get to their normal growth pattern, which is quite upright and almost vase-shaped. This is a larger miscanthus, 7 to 8 feet tall, 5 to 6 feet wide. So again, it will provide a nice buffer up here, as you can see. Right, if I can zoom in on that. We do have houses in a row looking up here. Most of our neighbors do not have any kind of landscaping in their backyard. I prefer to be a little bit more private, especially since this was woods and provided us with a buffer. We're just trying to continue that up here. So there are 3 miscanthus grasses transplanted from another location. There are 3 Prague viburnums, which I had also mentioned in the August tour. This one is doing quite nicely, much more filled in and dense than the other 2. This is the second one, which looks, actually it looks better even than it just did last week. And then there's a third one right here. And again, this will provide some evergreen buffer because this particular type of viburnum is an evergreen. Only in the harshest of winters it might lose its leaves. So this is the Prague viburnum, 10 to 12 feet tall. almost as wide. We have 3 other viburnums up here. Viburnum dentatum's. Those were not an addition. These were transplanted up here last year. This is an area that we have been working on since about 2020. Coming along nicely with the landscaping. We just really need to finish up back there. We have been trying to get wood chips, and it's just not easy because I don't know that I want to mulch an area that was woods. I don't know that I want to keep having to mulch, and wood chips just seems the way to go. Although if we can't get wood chips, we're going to have to figure out something else and either purchase some leaf litter and just continue on with that, because these leaves are just the leaves that fell from our trees last year. We raked them over here. To me, the area doesn't look finished until it receives some kind of mulch or wood chips or leaf litter. So we're working on that. Another addition up here are the 2 blue shadow fothergillas. Not sure how well they're showing up. These really have not put on much growth this year, so I don't know. Some things you plant grow quickly, even though there's that saying in gardening, the first year they creep, the first year they sleep, the second year they creep, the third year they leap. So this is their first year. So I guess they're kind of sleeping. Some other things have a tendency to grow a little bit faster. These haven't. They do tend to revert a little bit. They're supposed to be blue. They do tend to revert a little bit to green, but these are a taller, bigger fothergilla. I want to say 5 to 6 feet tall and wide, which is bigger than most, but I will put the stats on these up on the screen. We just recently added another Haas Halo hydrangea, and that is blooming really pretty up here. One of the biggest additions up here this year was trees. So I planted, I should say my husband planted this witch hazel. This is a Vincent's Red. I got this at work. For now, it's just kind of in a holding pattern. I'm not exactly sure where we're going to move it to. Somewhere up here, but because next year I want this to become a raised bed vegetable garden. So obviously we can't have the Pinky Winky hydrangea and the Vincent's Red growing here and blocking the sun. The Vincent's Red can get a little large, and again, I will put the stats up on the screen. Uh-oh. Sounds like somebody's having problems with their dog. And we planted a fringe tree, which again will probably get moved somewhere up here. Again, this is not in its permanent location. This is a native fringe tree. Just not sure where this is going to go. But we had, my husband moved 5 chokeberries up here from the rain garden berm. And they do look like they've taken a little bit of a hit, even though he's been up here watering them in well. You know, it's hot, it's late summer. If they go dormant, I'm not going to worry too much about that. They are a tough shrub. This is the Brilliantissima that was on our rain garden berm. We moved them up here because, again, this was a wood and is now not, although we are trying to replace, on this side at least, some of the buffer. You know, there was meadow seeds placed here, and I do see, I'm pretty sure that's a black-eyed Susan, that's a black-eyed Susan. So I do see some of the meadow flowers. I think I see some coneflowers in here. Some of the meadow flowers have germinated. A lot have not. Most of what I see up here is stilt grass, which is unfortunate. We have to keep coming up here and weed whacking before it goes to seed. Otherwise, this meadow will never be a meadow. But anyway, so on this side, I don't see as many of the meadow flowers. And this is where we kind of wanted a buffer. So we moved the chokeberries up here earlier in the year we had someone plant for us 4 good-sized eastern white pines, and those will block the houses behind us in the winter. Obviously not for the next couple of winters. It'll take a few years for these to get big enough to do that, but that's why we had those planted here. We had some larger river birches planted here. There's 3 of them. Kind of in a triangle up here, and you can see those are kind of going dormant too, and I'm guessing it's because it's been so dry, although again, my husband has been keeping them watered. And then we had the 3 red twig dogwoods transplanted up here from the side of the garage. So there's one back there, there's one here, and there's one over to here, which is looking a little wilty. Might need to get a sprinkler up here. So I feel like once this area really starts to fill in, and if we can get some wood chips to keep this stilt grass under control, this area will start to grow in, and in a few years it will look really nice. It will look again like it was a wood, just like a wood on purpose, one that will have been planted by us. So that is pretty much the last of the additions, changes that we have made this year, other than really just transplanting things. I mean, this is the wee white hydrangea we transplanted from a pot that had been on our deck. Last year we planted some of our patio containers with native plants and shrubs. This year we transplanted them, so that got transplanted up here. These are 3 of the daylilies that got transplanted up here from the front where we put the midnight sun weigelas. We transplanted a caramel heuchera up here. This again was in one of our containers that had native plants in it last year. This is where the sugar and spice foam flower got transplanted. 5 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They do seem like they are doing better. They're already much greener than they were. You can see on this one especially, the orange. That is what happens when they get too much sun and bleach out. So those are doing well up here. What else did we add up here? The geranium roseanne, which I feel like is not getting enough sun, and it is really stretching towards the sun. When I planted 3 of these, they were 3 nice clumps in a gallon container. They did not remain that for long, so I'm guessing we're probably going to have to move these. We added the diamond, what is it, Shadowland Diamond Lake. I think that's what it's called. Hosta. We added the Dicentra Ballantine, which is way past its peak now. You can see the leaves are really yellowing. We also added the Olive Valley Langdon Hosta. Here's the latest addition. Is my new urn purchase, and that Boston fern was a gift from a neighbor that still needs to be transplanted into the pot. We moved 3 blue moon phlox up here, which were gorgeous blue in the spring. Most of, the rest of the year they're just pretty much green. And the Southern Comfort heuchera. There's 2 Southern Comfort heuchera, 3 of the blue moon phlox, which are still under cloches for rabbit and deer protection. So that's pretty much it for what we've accomplished this year. There's some stuff that has just got moved to next year because we just couldn't get to it. The vegetable garden will have to be done next year. Finishing up back here will have to be done next year. I do hope to get some mulch or wood chips or something, at least on the ground, behind this log. And right over here, I just don't want to see bare dirt from the house, and that will help with runoff, help keep the soil temperatures cooler, help keep moisture in. So, a lot of accomplishments this year and a lot of new plants. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and if you're not already subscribed, please subscribe to my channel so that I can continue to produce more content. See you in the next one. Bye.